Hello, everyone. How's it going? This is the Bald Metal Nerd coming at you with another video. And in this video, I fulfill the promise of the internet as stated by The Simpsons, I believe, back in the 1990s, to let you know what some nerd thinks about Star Trek. I don't know what episode that was in or what season it was in, but if you Google the quote, I'm sure you can find the clip of Homer talking about that. Anyway, what this video is going to be is I'm going to basically be ranking all of the Star Trek characters, the major characters, basically my least favorite to favorite. Who I'm listing here is we're going to be basically doing all of the, I would call them main recurring characters. We're not going to be doing excellent characters that, weren't always on the show. Q is a prime example of this. I think he's definitely the best villain to ever grace Star Trek, but I'm not going to be talking about him specifically because he wasn't like a main cast member. Same thing with, I'm not going to talk about Sarek either because as awesome as Mark Leonard was in that role, he wasn't on enough to really make this list. So those are two great characters I'm not talking about. Another character that I'm leaving out of the rankings is Reginald Barkley because he was off and on the show. I liked him overall. In fact, I'd probably throw him right into the middle of the pack as far as characters. He wasn't terrible. He wasn't great. He would just be like right in the middle. So the first thing I'm going to do, like I said, is I'm going to talk about all of the main characters, worst to first. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the different series and talk about how they're structured and all that. And, there is going to be some complaining about Star Trek Discovery in this video. So if you like that show or whatever, feel free to tune out or whatever. But anyway, let's go ahead and dive into this. So, I'll start with the characters, right? We're going to talk about my least favorite character, and to nobody's surprise, my least favorite character ever is, of course, Michael Burnham. And why is Michael Burnham my least favorite character ever? I think she has very little to no redeeming qualities whatsoever as a character. She's incredibly arrogant, just unlikable. The character that they've written is just an unlikable character. She got somewhat better through season 1 of Star Trek Discovery, but not great. She never got good, and then season 2, they've made her worse again. She is just, in my opinion, a very poor character, and it would be hard for me to imagine a Star Trek character that be envisioned and executed worse than her. And she's the lead on your show. That's a big problem. So, she's my least favorite character. Moving on, who's my second least favorite character? Well, my second least favorite character is Seska from Star Trek Voyager. She was very unlikable overall. She was not an interesting villain. I know she wasn't on the entire run of the show, thank God, but she was just not a good character. Just kind of, bland for a villain, I thought, and just not well done. My next least favorite character. Oh, by the way, all of these characters at the bottom of the list, I would consider these all terrible characters, as in the TV shows that these respective characters were on would be far better if these characters didn't exist, period, on the show. All these characters make their respective shows worse. So, there you go. And now here's my next least favorite character, and that is Tilly from Star Trek Discovery. And, of course, the problem with Tilly is she's the second main character on Star Trek Discovery, right? There are others, and the other Discovery characters are actually much higher on my list. But, like I said, she is just, she's front and center in the show, and she sucks. She's annoying. She's just a very annoying character, in my opinion. Just too bubbly, just don't care for her at all. So, my next least favorite character, Wesley Crusher. He is, well, the boy genius who always saves the ship. I just never could get into his character. By the way, I don't blame the actors for these characters. They are, you know, given the scripts that they're given, right? They can only do what's on the page for their character. They can only follow what the writers did. Wesley did get a little bit better as the show proceeded, but he never really got good. He pretty bad character overall. So that is what I would call the end of the quote terrible characters. These were all characters that should have just been eliminated entirely from the show. So that's like I would call the absolute bottom rung of characters. The next rung of characters that we're going to be talking about, I would call them slightly unlikable characters. As in, I think the show would be slightly better if these characters didn't exist. They weren't nearly as much of a drag on the show as this first group of characters, but if they were gone, I don't really think many people would miss them. So, my first slightly unlikable character is Icheb, and I would just call I'm just bringing Icheb up. I don't remember the name of the other Borg kids that they rescued, but I would classify all of the Borg kids with Icheb. None of them were that great, and they were slightly unlikable, and they were just slightly annoying. Not as bad as, again, but I think Voyager definitely would have been better without that set of characters. So, next one that is slightly unlikable, Ezri Dax. And you're like, why are you picking on Ezri Dax? Well, it's not really Ezri that's the big problem. I think it's more the fact that you can't help but compare her to Jadzia, and Jadzia was so much better of a character than Ezri was. I thought it wasn't even close. Ezri wasn't terrible. She wasn't terrible, but she was certainly no Jadzia Dax, and she was just slightly meh, just didn't care for her that much. Again, this is all my personal opinion. Feel free to disagree wherever you like. So, my next slightly unlikable character is Philippa Georgiou from Discovery. And she mostly has been portrayed as, quote, the evil Georgiou. I actually liked, I haven't watched Short Treks, thank God, but as far as Georgiou goes in, as, quote, the Starfleet good Georgiou, I thought she was okay. I probably would have ranked her right in the, quote, middle of Star Trek characters, just kind of there. But the reason she's so low on this list is because, honestly, as the, quote, evil Georgiou of the Mirror Universe, she's just kind of annoying. Not horrific, but she's somewhat unlikable, and honestly, I think the show would be somewhat better if she wasn't on it at all. So, who's next on the list here? Okay, all right. The next slightly unlikable character is a major character, obviously, who is in everything Next Generation, and that, of course, is Deanna Troi. Not horrific, but they just didn't, and her character did improve over time. At first, like, she was really annoying, but they did make her character better over time, but they never got her to where she was a good character. Like, in her best moments, she was, like, mediocre to bad. I just could never get really hooked into the character. I mean, yeah, she's nice to look at, but, aside from that, just not much going on there. So who's our next unlikable character? Pulaski. I know there are some Pulaski fans out there, and she's, what I didn't like about her just was her personality. Again, this is just how she was written. I thought she was a bit too rough around the edges personality-wise. I know some people liked her, but I just found her slightly unlikable, you know, not horrific. So there you go. So we've kind of gotten to like the two absolute bottom tiers. Now we're going to get into a couple of what I would call uh, mediocre tiers, where these characters don't really take anything away from the show or make it any worse, but they don't really do a lot to, you know, propel it forward or make it much better. And the first group I'm going to talk about that are kind of in the mediocre range are characters that I just feel were undeveloped, and this is through no fault of the actors, and really no fault of the characters either. They just weren't written well enough to have big time, super memorable personalities. And of course, the least developed character that falls into this is I couldn't even remember his name. I just knew he was the gay doctor on Star Trek Discovery that was Stamets's partner, who died. Apparently, he's Hugh Colbert or something. You know, so the character I thought was generally fine. I didn't dislike him. It's just they, you know, didn't develop him nearly enough. You know, way more likable than a lot of characters on the show. But you know, just not really particularly well developed. In fact, like I said, I couldn't remember his name. I just typed gay doctor, but apparently that's his name. So it shows you how much of a impact he made on me. The next undeveloped character, or, you know, underdeveloped character, was Yeoman Rand from the original series. Again, really nice to look at, but they didn't really develop her enough. I thought she was fine generally as a character. They just didn't do it, you know, didn't make her compelling enough. Not through no fault of the actress or the character. So the next one is this is my next underdeveloped character. And again, I think as far as, quote, all of the, quote, underdeveloped characters, they did the best job with this one, obviously, and that, of course, is Nurse Chapel from the original series. I liked her. As far as the, quote, underdeveloped characters, I actually liked her better than some of the, you know, other characters that I rated as okay, because that's the next ranking, but I just don't think they developed her well enough, but I really did like her personality. And I thought she fit into the show really well. So I guess she did add a bit to it. Maybe I should have rated her higher on this list, but she just kind of came to mind as an underdeveloped character. So moving on. The next tier that I'm about to talk about are these instead of being underdeveloped, the next ranking characters that I'm going to talk about I rate as okay, which means they're completely middle of the road. And when we get to the top of the list, some of them are bordering on fairly good, but these are kind of like I would call them the completely non-offensive, okay characters that, Right, so anyway, let's dive into it. The next character on this list is going to be Ash Tyler from Discovery slash Vok. He's not terrible, but he's very generic in my opinion. He's not compelling to me really at all. He's just kind of there. He's like there, just kind of like a generic block in a you know, that's just my opinion of him. Don't hate him. Don't love him. Just not compelling. Okay. Next character, Hoshi Sato from Enterprise. Kind of the same thing. Very attractive, you know, but again, not super well, you know, done. She had some good moments. Like, I really liked the, quote, evil Sato from the Mirror Universe. I thought she was excellent in that, but overall, I just kind of found her to be an okay character. So, there you go. Next one that I thought was okay was Beverly Crusher. And I liked her, kind of. But again, I just kind of found her to be an okay character. Nothing remarkable, nothing terrible. She was just kind of there during the whole show. You know, she provided somewhat of a love interest for Picard here and there. But overall, meh. You know? So these are now the next and that concludes what I call the okay tier of characters. The next uh, group of characters I'm going to put in, I would call them basically middle of the road characters. These are characters that are just shy of being good. These are better than completely average, but they still fall short of being good, right? So let's go ahead and dive into that. And the one that's on that, the first one is B'Elanna Torres from Voyager. I know she has a lot of fans, and I thought she was okay. But again, middle of the road character. You know, there you go. Next one, Jake Sisko from Deep Space Nine. Unfortunately, any, kid character is not going to be that great because kids are not going to be able to do as much as you can with adults, period. Next character that I consider middle of the road is Nog, and same reason, because, but I liked him better than Jake Sisko overall. I guess probably just because he was an alien instead of human, that probably helped, right? Now, this next character that we're going to talk about, I still consider him a middle of the road character, but I don't know, he could be considered good in some context. I did like him, and that is Travis Mayweather from Enterprise. I liked his personality overall. I liked his friendliness and overall demeanor, but I don't think they really did enough with him. And again, that's not his fault, just the way the scripts were written. And the next middle of the road character is Kess. And, again, they just didn't do enough with her. And, yeah. So, now, basically, where we're at from here, when we talked about the okay characters, I didn't feel they really added anything to the show particularly. Some of them did in some moments. The middle of the road characters that I just talked about, I think the shows were generally improved with them. So even though I considered them middle of the road characters, I still think the show was overall better with them than without them, for sure. So I'm glad all of these characters were on the shows. Next up, the next tier of characters I'm going to talk about, I'm going to call them good, which definitely means I think that they were, above the middle of the pack. They were above average and definitely added something to the show. And the first one I'm going to talk about, and this character has a lot of haters, I realize that, and that's Neelix. I liked some of his humor. I think that's the only reason he made it as high on the list as he did, because he did definitely had some annoying personality traits, but I really did like some of the jokes he made and all that, and there were certain things about him I did like. So Neelix, I would say, was the worst good character. Moving on from that, Cassidy Yates. I liked her. I think overall she improved Deep Space Nine. I really liked her personality. It really shone through. And I think she interacted really well with Sisko, who's really high on this list. We'll get there. I really liked Cassidy Yates, even though she wasn't a crew member. I think she was definitely one of the better non-crew members to be featured regularly on the show. Let's see who's next. Okay. My next good character is Captain Pike. I would say he qualifies, from The Cage and this. And the reason the only reason he's as low on this list as he is because, if I only had to think about Captain Pike from the Star Trek show, the pilot, The Cage, he'd probably be higher on the list. Discovery's Pike is likable. I do like him. I definitely think he makes the show better. Probably my biggest problem with with Pike on Discovery, honestly, is I think Saru should be captain. We'll get to Saru in a while, but you know, but I do like Pike, and I think he does a pretty good job on the show. So, but there are things, you know, I that could be probably a little bit improved on him. And one thing I don't love about him is I think he's a little too similar to the Kirk from the 2009 reboot, which, yeah, I hate the reboot Star Trek. We'll get to that when we talk about overall Star Trek. You know, but overall, good character. Anyway, moving on. The next one is Stamets from Discovery. I like him. I think he's a pretty good character. Pretty likable, actually. You know, as far as a character goes, he's not quote a super nice guy, but I really like the way the actors portraying the character, and I like what they've done with the character. I think he's just a good character. So anyway, moving on. The next quote good character is Ro Laren from Next Generation. I liked her. You know, very solid overall character. Definitely more. There were a few negatives with her, but I think, excuse me, overall there were more positives than negatives with her. So I think that makes her a good character. Next up, we got Rom from Deep Space Nine. He was definitely, you know, I really liked some of the moments with Rom and how he, you know, eventually stood up to Quark and all that. He had pretty decent character development throughout the series. Yeah, he was more of a bit player, but I really liked him. I thought he was a good character and definitely added to the show. Next one we got after that is Chakotay from Voyager. I thought he was a good, solid first officer. He wasn't... he's no Riker or Spock, obviously. Or Jadzia Dax, I guess would probably, or well, Kira Nerys, I don't know. Whatever. I thought he was a really good, solid first officer, just not truly outstanding. But I did like him, and I thought overall he was a good character. Next up, Tom Paris from Voyager. You know, good, solid character. I liked him. Definitely the show was better with him than without him. And then, of course, the one right above him is his buddy, Harry Kim. I thought Harry was a slightly better character. Again, this is just my own personal opinion, and I just thought he was done slightly better than Tom Paris was. So there you go. And the next good character on this list is Tasha Yar. Now, she would probably be higher on the list if she had been on the show longer. You know, she was only on for one season of Next Generation. Yeah, she came back in like an episode or two. You know, she played Sela, obviously, the Romulan, and she did really good as that, but Sela is not making this list for obvious reasons. I really liked her in Yesterday's Enterprise. I thought she was awesome in that episode. Definitely, Yesterday's Enterprise is definitely the best Tasha Yar episode ever. I also thought she was really good in the series finale of Next Generation, All Good Things. I think she did a great job in that as well. So, good character, good solid character, and she would have made it to the next tier if she had simply been on the show more. I think really solid character, really good. Just wasn't there long enough. The next tier that I'm going to talk about now are what I consider great characters who obviously greatly added to the show, and I was really glad these characters were there. So, at least we only got about 31 characters to go. We're about halfway there, guys. So, all right. The bottom tier great character is 7 of 9. You know, I think they did a pretty good job with her. The fact that she basically slowly had to acclimate to humanity after being a Borg for so long, I thought was really well done. You know, her knowledge of the Borg was obviously pretty useful on the show, all that stuff. Overall, I think she was definitely a great character, but not as great as some of the other ones that are coming up on this list. So, next one is Chekhov, of course, from the original series. Really liked him. And hold on, I think I just realized where I screwed. Yep. Okay. Yep. Okay. That explains it. So Chekhov is next on the list, and yeah, not much to say about him except very likable, great character. Next one, Trip Tucker from Enterprise, really good chief engineer. Not the best, character, but hell, he's up there. He's in the top, 30. So, and I said again, great character. So that means I really like him. So next one, Uhura, I would say qualifies as the next great character. Definitely a fantastic Star Trek character. Very strong, and I really like the way they characterized her on the original show. I forgot. My problem is I accidentally deleted. You're seeing who I'm picking next, but that's okay. Sulu qualifies as the next great character after Uhura. I think they did a great job with him. Not much else to say except fantastic character. After that, Kira Nerys, very compelling character overall. I thought I really liked the way they characterized her. Did really well. Right above her, Geordi LaForge, and here we have a Geordi torture moment, from the show. Very likable character overall. Really fantastic, great character. Not much else to say about him. Now, the next pick here might be a little, controversial considering how high I have him in the list, but here goes. Captain Lorca from Discovery. And then you're going to say, well, why is he so much higher on the list than Tasha? Because of the fact that, Tasha was only on for one season, so was Lorca. Well, the reason I have Lorca so high up the list as compared to Tasha is because Lorca had more of an impact on his season of Discovery than Tasha had on. I mean, he was the captain of season 1, so he had way more of an impact overall on the show. And him and Saru, if it weren't for him and Saru on season 1 of Discovery, it just would have been a completely unwatchable. Well, who am I kidding? It still is. Okay. If it hadn't been for him and Saru, there would have been no redeeming features whatsoever of the entire show. He really is the only thing that was. Him and Saru were the only two good things about Discovery, in my opinion, as far as season 1 goes. So there you go. So that's why Lorca made it so high on the list. I know he's definitely a controversial pick, but and I don't like the fact that they made him, the evil mirror guy. I thought that was lame and shitty. But overall, I definitely liked the character quite a bit. That's why he made the great ranking. So, one above him, Malcolm Reed from Enterprise. Fantastic character. I liked the fact that, Section 31 was trying to get him, and he was like, conflicted about it. I really liked the conflict he showed there, and just overall, a great character. Next one after that is, of course, Captain Archer from Enterprise. Absolutely great captain. Not the greatest captain, but again, a really, really good character. And they did a lot with him, and I really liked him. So, next one. Saru. Oh my gosh, you're ranking him above Archer. Yeah, I am. He's the best character on Discovery by a mile. Nobody else from. Well, I think have we covered everybody from. Yeah. Okay. So, but he's not even in the top 15. Okay, so take that as you will. I like him. He's definitely good, a great character. And there you go. It's just where Saru happened to fall onto the list. So right above him, we got T'Pol from Enterprise. I think she was probably the best character on Enterprise. Yeah, she is. She's She's the last one from Enterprise on here, so she's obviously, in my opinion, the best character from Enterprise. I think they did, well with the quote whole, fish out of water thing at first, because at first she obviously didn't want to be on a human ship, but she, obviously integrated really well with the crew, and they did a great job with her. Plus, obviously, we got a very beautiful woman playing the role. Sorry, I can't help but be a sucker for that. So, the next great character after that, of course, is William Riker. What I really need to say about him, definitely one of the best first officers that was in Star Trek. There you go. My next great character is one of the villains, actually. In fact, the only real villain, another person on this list, I guess, can be considered a villain, but he's the most overt villain on, this list, and that's Gul Dukat. Really great character. They made him a very deep and multifaceted villain. They didn't just make him generic, which I thought was fantastic. Just really a great character overall. I really enjoyed the interplay with him and Cisco. Fantastic. Next one after that is Bashir. And let's see, where are we on the list here? Okay, we're getting there. We finally broken top 20, guys. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to say. Yeah, we've now crossed another threshold. We just were talking about great characters. Now we're getting into what I call my personal favorite characters, and it's the highest tier that there is. These are my personal favorite characters, and these are the characters that I think about the most when I think about Star Trek. These I feel are absolutely the best of the best as far as the characters go in the upper echelon of characters, and these characters are what makes these shows absolutely fantastic. So, my least favorite, personal favorite, is Julian Bashir. I really liked what they did with him. I really liked the interplay with him and Miles O'Brien. Just an absolutely fantastic character. Next one after him, Jadzia Dax. Hence you say why Ezri was so low on my list. I just think that highly of Jadzia. Absolutely wonderful character. Just fantastic. Just fantastically done. Fantastically great. Next one we're talking about is Janeway. Not my favorite captain, but she's still really high up on the list. I think she's actually, a great lead. I think she anchored Voyager really well. She obviously made it to my personal favorites list, so I have no problems with her. Which is part of the whole thing about, never mind. Some of the statements made around Discovery. I'm gonna keep her image on the screen for a reason. So, anyway, next one we're gonna talk about is Miles O'Brien, and absolutely great character. I liked him on Next Generation, but of course he really came into his own on Deep Space Nine. They really developed the character extremely well, gave him a lot of grief, and overall did a fantastic job with him. After that, we got Scotty. What I really need to say about Scotty, except fantastic, wonderful character. Always could get the Enterprise out of a jam, yada, yada, yada. Next one, Phlox. I picked that one because one of my favorite things about Phlox, of course, really all of these characters are their personalities. And I like the fact that he was, funny and friendly. That's really how he struck me. It was just funny and friendly and really smart. He would, whatever. Fantastic character, Dr. Phlox from Enterprise. So, I guess I lied. There was somebody I liked better than T'Pol. Oops. My next personal favorite character, they rated him way lower than I did. But anyway, Tuvok. I thought Tuvok was awesome. Absolutely a wonderful character and absolutely phenomenal overall. What else to say about him? Great Vulcan. There you go. My next great character or personal favorite is Worf. For obvious reasons, how can you like Star Trek and not love Worf? There's something wrong with you if you don't. I'd say the same thing about Odo, who's next on my list. Honestly, Worf and Odo could have been flipped, maybe. I don't know. Hard to say. You know, how you could really flip the last three, maybe. Because now we're really getting down to splitting hairs at this point. Next character is the Doctor from Voyager. And that is really based on the fact that he was just such a comical, hilarious character. He just made me laugh so much. That's why he's as high on the list as he is. Just really, 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 really funny. And yeah, he put his foot in his mouth all the time and just hilarious. He thought way too highly of himself and he was smacked down. Great character. Next one is Quark. And, you know, we're in top 10 territory here. And just love Quark. I don't see how you can not like him. You know, the quote, devious, plotter, but of course with a heart of gold. And again, comic relief, and on a show that greatly needed comic relief. There you go. That's Quark in a nutshell. Next is, he's really high on the list, Elam Garrick, the Simple Tailor, of course. Absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal the way he, moved about and tried to hide his activities and would claim, well, I'm not a spy. Just wonderful, wonderful character. I'm going to pause real quick, guys. All right, guys, here we are several hours later. We're moving on from the Simple Tailor of Elam Garrick to Data, but I'm going to show you the reason for the long pause and delay, and basically I had to do a little bit of a dog rescue. Let me, this adorable dog here was basically found outside my home. My kid said, oh, look, there's a dog out here, and this was the dog, so basically we ended up taking her to a local no-kill shelter. They had overnight drop-off. Very cute, friendly, adorable dog. So, yeah. That necessitated a long break. But anyway, my next favorite character is Data, because we're up to, let's see, how many are left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Top 6. So we're almost to the top 5. Data, obviously, what needs to be said about Data? Not a lot. An absolutely fantastic, awesome character. Tons of growth. One of the absolute pillars of Star Trek, needless to say. My fifth, number 5, although I could flip him with the next character. Maybe I should. Maybe he should be number 4 instead of number 5. Benjamin Sisko. Excellent character. Awesome. Wonderful. Absolutely loved that character. Next, of course, is Bones. Leonard McCoy. Who could not love Bones? Because he was everything but a doctor. Oh, wait, no. He was everything that was... Anyway, after that, we got Kirk. Now, this was hard. I mean, after all, the only question I ever thought was hard is, do I like Kirk or do I like Picard? But I had to rank them somehow. This was a difficult call to make, but Kirk was my number 3 pick. My number 2 pick, of course, is Picard. It's going to be hard not to, love Picard. And, of course, my favorite character is Spock. Leonard Nimoy, incarnation, obviously. So, there you go. And you might be asking yourself, why do you still have these two on the screen? We'll get to that. So, obviously, I kind of went through the entire list of main Star Trek characters for a reason. We're also going to talk about the relative quality of basically the franchise. To me, the absolute worst thing, the most poorly executed iteration of Star Trek ever is Discovery. I feel the scripts are the weakest, and there's so many problems with it. Big problem, of course, is just aesthetics, and what I mean by aesthetics is you have the poop orc Klingons that are just these horrific. They're more like monstrous beasts than the Klingons that we're familiar with. They're terrible. They are absolutely they're shit, and they literally look like shit. So yeah, they are a bad iteration of Klingons. Just terrible. The next worst iteration of Star Trek ever, in my opinion, is the 2009 and later reboot movies. Those, some of the fans call them bad reboot instead of bad robot. I would say that's a pretty apt name. They never should have tried to reboot Star Trek. They wanted to bring Star Trek back. They should have done something new rather than trying to redo the original crew. To me, it's poor. The next worst iteration of Star Trek after that, I would say these two series are roughly tied. Now, these series aren't bad. I would call them okay, for lack of a better term. And I'm gonna have to say slightly below, slightly less is Enterprise, and then slightly better is Voyager. That's how I'd rate it. I think before Voyager, Enterprise was definitely the worst show, but it wasn't bad. It was just kind of meh, Voyager was kind of the same. And don't get me wrong, both of Voyager and Enterprise had some really great storylines in them and some really great episodes. But I'm just talking more the overall feel of the series. Just kind of fell flat a little bit compared to what had come before. Next up, these are what I would call two series that I consider absolutely great. And these two series are phenomenal and legendary in every way, in my opinion. But I'm only going to name two more of them. I tell you, well, then there'll only be one series left, and it's my favorite, and I'll tell you why it's my favorite. The next two series that I consider absolutely great and fantastic, even though they definitely had some bad episodes. And I guess I have to pick one over the other. I guess if I'm forced to rank these, I will go with original series and then Next Generation. And you're asking yourself, well, why are you ranking the original series below Next Generation? I think really it has more to do with, the time period. For the 1960s, I mean, if we're looking at, the relative time period when they came out, I think the Next Generation was I'm not sorry. If we're looking at the 60s, the original series was so ridiculously far ahead of its time as far as the drama on it, the vision of the future, all of these things in the original Star Trek show were so visionary, and the characters were so great. It truly was a wonderful show in the I still think it holds up, and there's a ton of episodes that still hold up really well today. In fact, I've been rewatching the original series recently on Netflix, and it still holds up. I still really, 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 really enjoy the original series. But the Next Generation, I think, is slightly better. Not by a lot. It's by a hair, but it is slightly better, and I think that's because the Next Generation was able to kind of springboard off what the original series did, and they were able to build more of an immersive world than what I think what Next Generation did better than the original show was they did world building a lot better than on the original show, right? And it's Simply that. That's why I think the next generation is better. As far as overall characters, yeah, I don't know. So now we're going to talk about my favorite series, which of course only leaves Deep Space Nine. And you're saying, well, why is Deep Space Nine your favorite? This is why I left Benjamin Sisko up here on the screen. Why is Deep Space Nine your favorite series? Well, Deep Space Nine is my favorite series because out of all the series, it did absolutely the best world building of all, I thought. Um, and the character, it was so full of such compelling characters. So well, the storyline was so well done. The whole 9 yards, absolutely wonderful show. And what is funny to me is, a lot of people are like, well, people are like, oh, you don't. When people say, they assume you don't like Discovery for various reasons. They're like, oh, well, you don't like Discovery because it's, quote, dark. Well, Deep Space Nine was dark as well. I mean, the whole thing going on with the Dominion War and all of the underhanded things that Sisko did. The difference between Discovery and Deep Space Nine was Deep Space Nine was a masterclass in presenting those things. The scripts were well written. The characters were believable, compelling, likable, and that's why it's such a beloved series by Trek fans, because it was done properly. Discovery is just a giant fucking mess of incoherent garbage for the most part. Now, there are some good parts about it. As I pointed out, I really do like some of the characters, but overall it's just poor. So, and another complaint is, oh, well, you don't like it because of, you're a misogynist or racist or whatever. Well, here I present the case against it. Two of my favorite characters. One is a woman, and the other's a black man. So it has nothing to do with Michael Burnham's gender or race. I find people who say such things to be small-minded fools, right? They just can't accept that it's garbage. I don't understand the extreme defense of Star Trek Discovery that some people seem to have, and they just ascribe people who don't like Discovery as, quote, trolls or right-wing or whatever, which is ridiculous. I am probably more liberal than many people who claim to defend Discovery. Who knows? But that's basically it. I mean, it's the reason I think Discovery is so bad is because the two main characters are so unlikable and shitty. That's just what they are. They're terrible characters, and the show would be far better if they died in a shuttle crash or something. Right? And not only that, but the scripts are not good, and the way they've changed Star Trek so much, it's just not good. It's just everything is executed extremely poorly. So anyway, that's pretty much it. I really hope you guys like this. If you sat through this entire thing, wow, you are dedicated to hear somebody talk about Star Trek. But anyway, if you like this, as always, thumbs up. If you hate me, thumbs down. Tell me I suck. Whatever. Share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Thanks so much for watching, and live long and prosper.